Do you have to be a role model and set an example for your kids as a dad? That's what we're talking about today. Let's get into it. If you think being a dad is filled with rewards, challenges, or headaches, and you keep pushing forward because you know this is the most important job you're ever going to do, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Dad's All In podcast. Hey, fellow dad. Thanks for checking out the podcast. I hope your week has been amazing and things are going great for you, my friend. In this episode, we're going to dive into being a role model. Do you really have to be a role model that sets an example for your kids, or can they just look elsewhere? That's what we're going to dive into. Right from the jump, though, I'm going to be straight as I can be. This is something I am super passionate about, this topic in particular. And it stems from my experiences working with kids who did not have a lot of role models in their lives. Specifically, many of them did not have male role models, fathers in their lives to help them. Or, in many cases, they had fathers who weren't great role models, and it impacted their lives and not always in positive ways. I want to give you this one main statement. Kids get their cues from their heroes. And whether you know it or not, you're a hero, you're a leader. Now, eventually, if you continue to make poor choices in your life, you might not be a hero for your kids any longer. But when they're young, and when I say they're young, I don't necessarily mean just 3. When they're younger, elementary school age, they're looking at you for guidance on how they should be operating in the world. And when I say guidance, that doesn't necessarily always mean just advice, like your conversational advice. If you listen to the previous episode, I talked a little bit about the importance of getting what you're saying matching up with your actions. There are a lot of people in this world who maybe they've got actions and they'll do it, they don't talk about it, but it's usually the reverse. There's a lot of people who say stuff and they don't follow through, or they just say stuff and they don't care about the ramifications of it. We have a gross lack of positive role models in our society. It's sad, but it's true. Now, this is not a podcast episode about, tell you all the things you're doing wrong. That's not it at all. Matter of fact, we're never going to be perfect. You're always going to fail, but we always need to try to fail forward. We need to try to get better. And that's what this is about, talking about the importance of you trying to be a better person, a better role model, a better hero for your kids. It is possible. So as I go through this discussion today and you start thinking about, maybe this is something I could improve in, or this is a specific area that I know I'm falling short in. We all have areas we're falling short in, myself included. The line starts behind me, folks. That's exactly that's my mentality. And as long as I live, I will never be good enough, meaning from a father's standpoint, because this is the most important job I'm ever going to have. So just keep trying to get better. And that's my message to you. You always want to try to just keep getting better. So if there's something you want to focus on for self-improvement in this area, what we talk about today, I'm going to give you some suggestions at the end on how to attack that. But back to the main message. They are watching you. They're watching you even when you don't think they are. Your kids are looking at you for ways to interact with the world, how to treat others, how to communicate with others, and sometimes the way you act sends a message to your kids. If you are their hero, which in many cases, a parent in general is their hero. They're looking at you and you're showing them things that they probably shouldn't be doing. They might not know, and they're just going to follow suit. We need mentors in this world. And by mentors, I mean people who are trying to show how to interact and be respectful with others, how to be a good person and help others out. I'm a firm believer, coming from the previous K-12 world, I'm a firm believer in the power of mentorship, not just from a teacher standpoint. Yes, teachers need to mentor teachers and help them get better, but also mentoring kids. So I started a mentoring program at my previous school district across all the schools, or the majority of them anyway, where we would link up kids who needed somebody to look up to, a role model, and we had them work with those kids, come in once a week, make a connection, just be a positive influence in their lives. That is hopefully the role of a father. Hopefully it's the role of the mother too, to be honest with you. It's the people who have the biggest impact on the lives of kids. That's who we want, showing them how to interact with the world. And if they don't get it from you, they're going to look for guidance elsewhere. So when I think about mentorship, I'm going to share this quick story with you about how easy it is to fall, to get off the rails. I grew up in a house in upstate Pennsylvania in a very small community filled with just amazing people. And my dad was an elementary school teacher, very much a positive influence on me. One of the things that I remembered my dad telling me as I was getting ready myself to head out to be an elementary school teacher was he said, listen, when you go into the classroom, you're going to find that the teachers who yell the least have the best classroom management. His message was really, you shouldn't be just yelling at kids to try to get them to do stuff. I always took that with me. And so I went through college and did some experiences out in different schools. And then I had an opportunity to work in an inner city school as a student teacher. First grade classroom. So to paint a picture, I had 5 and 6-year-olds. This was a school that was grossly lacking resources. There were amazing kids, but school was kind of broken down. It was old, and actually now I don't even think it's being used anymore. And I had like a cooperating teacher who helped me, but there was another teacher, kind of like a team teacher who taught right next door, and he happened to be a male. And so I connected pretty well with him. And this is what happens when you watch others. You start to do their actions. So he had some positive traits as a teacher. He connected pretty well with kids, but he also would get on them. And by get on them, I mean like maybe not completely yell at them, but really come fairly close. And in the back of my mind, I knew that wasn't the best case scenario. You're talking about kids who probably get yelled at home all the time. Let's be honest. A lot of them did. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And in some cases, I got to witness some of the parents coming to pick up their kids, yelling at their kids about, really benign little things. So I remember one day I had to take a group of first graders. It all happened to be boys. We had some screwballs in that class. I thought they were great kids. They made me laugh, but they were a handful. And they had lost their recess because of some of the poor choices they made. And so I stood back along with this teacher. He and I were in the room together with these kids, and he let them have it. And by let them have it, meaning like he got on them about their poor behavior, and I just remember the look in their eyes. And unfortunately, he then left the room, and I was supposed to see out the last couple minutes and then send them out to recess. And instead of me just kind of maybe cleaning up the mess, which is what I now know I should have done, in other words, like talking them through it, I jumped right in and I gave it to them too. As a teacher who taught a long time, that was one of maybe the biggest learning experiences and one of my biggest regrets. That even though I knew what was right, I still did what was wrong. You see, this is the power that you have as a dad. They watch you. Even if it's not right, and your kid may know what you're doing is not right, they may follow suit too. It is part of being a role model. You set a precedent. Luckily for me, I still had that positive influence in my father in the back of my mind, and I also had a little bit better bearings about myself and knew I'm not doing this anymore. Like, this is not what teaching's all about. This is not going to bring out the best in these kids. And I learned from that experience. And so I bring that up as an example because we all make mistakes, but it's also an example of me. If you can picture me as like a 20-year-old kid, 21-year-old kid, I was learning from this young teacher. I say young, he was probably in his young 30s, who I had respected, and he seemed like he knew what he was doing. And so I went along and did pretty much what he did. What happens with fatherhood is they're watching you, they're taking their cues from you. And if you're showing things that you probably shouldn't be, and it could be as simple as how you treat others. It could be as simple as listening to people even though you may not agree with them, which is not just a problem that we have, it's a problem that society has as a whole, in my opinion. If somebody disagrees about one thing, apparently you can't listen to them. I honestly don't buy that. But unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at. And if you need an example, look at what happens in our political climate. If you're a Democrat and somebody says something that triggers you to think that they're a Republican, you just shut down and don't listen to the rest of what they have to say. If you're a Republican and somebody you're talking to like kind of cues you in and clues you into the fact that, oh, they might be a Democrat, then you just shut down, don't listen to what they have to say. Or worse, people start talking about each other in horrific ways. Look at some of the leadership we have in Washington. Instead of having disagreements about political stances or whatever the main topics of the day are, people resort to name calling. They resort to, telling people they're ignorant. And in reality, it sends a message, whether you like it or not. It sends a message about what you think right and wrong is. And I get it. There is and has been a growing population of people who believe, if I want to say it, I'm going to say it. I don't care if it hurts or offends anybody. I understand that. However, I look at our youth, and our youth have more challenges now than ever, maybe ever before. They're going through a lot, and they're looking for us to be role models. They're looking for us to show them how to act in the world, and I'm going to be straight. I think as adults as a whole, we're doing a pretty daggone lousy job of it. We're showing them how not to act, how to not get along. One of the things that should be amazing about our country is that we all have differences, but we figure out a way to make it work and learn from each other. When I went from, the hills of Pennsylvania to college, and then from college to where I'm at in Delaware, each of those stops, I started to run into people I had not met before, and people maybe had different belief systems or different views on things, and I was able to learn from them. However, the mentality now is, if I don't agree, I'm just going to spite you somehow, some way, instead of giving them an opportunity. That's probably a whole topic we'll dive into on another podcast episode, but overall, here's the message for this episode I want you to know. We need to focus on trying to be the best versions of ourselves in front of our kids. Now, let me kind of talk about what that means. Does that mean if you want to have a beer with your buddies, you can't do that? No. No, that's not what I'm getting at. Does that mean if you are having a picnic and you're a couple friends around, you can't swear? Maybe. I don't know. It's up to you. I would say it kind of depends on the age of the kids that are around you, though. It also depends on what you're saying. Young kids shouldn't be hearing F-bombs coming out of their father on a regular basis. Just my take. You want to know why I got that take? Because here's what happened. For years, remember I taught at the elementary level for 20 years before I moved to a district-wide position. So for 20 years, I knew I was working with a group of kids. Many of them didn't have fathers who were positive role models in their lives, and so they in turn would have to look at me, the only other male in their life, in many cases, to be a role model, because they knew that their father, what the things that were coming from their father or the things that their fathers were doing were not appropriate. What is more impactful? The father does things that are appropriate. The father does things to set an example. Do you really want your kids to grow up to just yell at people, not understand people, and just be filled with hate and anger? I'm going to guess no. My hope is no. I know I don't want that for my kids. So in turn, the idea is looking at yourself and thinking about what you can do to be a positive influence on them. And actions speak louder than words, but when you get your words to match up with your actions, you get the biggest bang for your buck. So maybe you want to look at focusing on how you treat others in front of your kids. Maybe you want to look at how you listen to others, how you help others. Or maybe it's just as simple as, maybe I shouldn't swear so much in front of my kids. And listen, we all have our moments, right? Being a dad is hard. Being an adult in modern society with all the stressors that we have is really hard. But we need to make sure that we don't lose focus of the one thing, which is this is the most important job we're doing. I know that it doesn't pay your bills and your day job, your day gig is important, but being a dad is the most important. And you're never going to have a more important job than this. So here's my challenge to you. Can you identify an area that you feel like maybe I could get a little more polished in? When you talk about like self-improvement, if you choose too much, you're never going to accomplish anything. You're going to oversaturate yourself and nothing will happen. But if you choose just one area, you give yourself grace and know you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to reach your goal, whatever goal you set immediately. You can get there though. It just takes time, takes effort. So let me just use this example. If, for example, I wanted to swear less in front of my kids, or maybe I just wanted to try to talk more respectfully to others when my kids are around. Honestly, I don't care what you're saying for the most part when your kids aren't around. I'm more concerned about you being a role model as a dad to your kids when they are around. But do be careful, because sometimes they're listening and watching even when you don't think they are. So keep that in mind. So let's take, for example, this idea of I just want to swear less around my kids. I want to drop less F-bombs around my kids when they're around, okay? And if you need a reason why, it's because you need to teach them that sometimes in life you got to show restraint. Your kids go to school, they can't be using that kind of language. And I will be honest with you, teachers have to work with a lot of kids to try to break them of this habit, because they hear parents at home who are swearing, they in turn bring that to school. They don't know better. So this is a good example of something that we all can kind of focus on. So if I want to try to get better at swearing less, what can I do? Well, the first thing is I'm going to identify my issue, right? So maybe it is I drop too many F-bombs when my kids are around, especially when my neighbor comes over and we're chatting. So then the next phase is set a goal for yourself. Well, I want to swear less when that particular person comes over, because I find that I'm a little bit looser with my language. Maybe we're hacking it up a little bit, so I'm not quite as dialed into my kids are around. So I just want to be able to have a little bit more bearings about myself and just swear less if I can avoid swearing at all when he's over. So then what's the third piece? And this is the part, and we'll probably at some point do an episode on goal setting, but here's the part that most people don't realize, and it's the most important part of the goal setting process. I actually learned this when I brought in a new curriculum to the school district, worked with the University of Kansas, and I actually learned this from them. And it's that you have to identify the barriers that get in the way. What are the things that are actually getting in the way of you meeting your goal? So in this case, well, let's see. What would be a barrier? I'll identify, he comes over, my friend comes over, we're hacking it up. What is something that gets in the way of me not meeting that goal? Well, he probably says a few things that has some swear words, and then I also fill in as well because we're comfortable together. So that could, oddly enough, that could kind of be a barrier. It's something that makes it difficult for you to get to your goal. So then you need to try to figure out, what am I going to do? He's going to hack it up, and maybe I'm just then going to say, hey, let's just step outside and go to the garage for a little bit. We'll have a beer in the garage. Something that you can do to get over or around that particular barrier, whatever it is. So I use swearing as one example. Anything particularly that you'd like to get better in. So the idea here is we all need to be better. Society as a whole needs to be better. Unfortunately, it is a place where people are angry. They're not short of opinions, but sometimes we need to show restraint. I've been amazed at all my years working in various places and participating in tons of meetings, and that be in the school district, but also because I would work across committees on a state level as well. There would always be some people who are fired up and they're just coming in with flamethrowers and saying exactly whatever it is that they're ticked off about. And we'll go for a while. And then there would be one person who didn't say anything, but then would just quietly say, have you thought about this? And they throw out one idea and you're like, wow, that person is the smartest person in this room. They didn't show it until now because they had restraint. You see, we are definitely as a society lacking that. Sometimes it's good to listen. Sometimes it's good to hold your tongue a little bit. Understand what you say matters when you're a leader. And as a dad, you're a leader. Your actions matter. And it matters more when you're a leader. Guess what? You're a dad. You're a leader. So I'll make this pact with you today as I record this. Let's all just try to be a little bit better. Our kids deserve a little bit better. There has never been a better time for dads to rise up and be positive role models than what we are in right now. We need it. They need it. I hope you enjoyed this. I know it's a little bit, I don't want you to feel like I'm preaching to you. More like I'm preaching to myself and sharing ideas with you. Hopefully that came through a little bit, because we all just need to get better. Our kids deserve it. Being a role model is super important. They're getting our cues that we're sending, whatever they are, because we're their heroes, like it or not. Thanks so much for listening to me today, dads. I appreciate you. And just make one small request before I jet. Follow, subscribe, put ratings out for wherever you're listening, because it's helpful, and other dads will get, or more likely to get, this content if you do that. I'll also say, if you haven't done so already, stop over our YouTube channel. We have Dad's All In Podcast YouTube channel, where I provide videos every week about different topics. A lot of them align with the topics we're talking about here, but you can also jump into those conversations that we have in the comments section, which I highly suggest you do. I'd love to hear from you, whether it be there or even email me, dadsallinpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, fellas. Have a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for sticking around. If you got any questions you want answered on the show, or you just want some feedback or want to share some ideas, shoot me an email, dadsallinpodcast@gmail.com, or send me a DM on any of the socials @rechargedfamily. Thanks for listening.